3:29. We will start it. Oh, it's being recorded. Here we go. Okay. I'm going to give people 1 more minute. It says 3:29 on mine. But feel free to look at this slide that's here in front of you that tells you all about the training if you're new to joining us today. We do record these and we archive them on our website under 2021 weekly trainings, I believe. It's on the left side tab. And I'm planning to present for 25 to 30 minutes, and then hopefully we can have some great discussion about your thoughts about what I'm sharing today about routines and independence. If you would like to ask a question or make a comment, you can post it in the chat. Kayla and Brian will be paying attention to that, or you could click your raise hand and I'll answer your questions and comments at the end. And then I'm assuming most folks have been using Zoom enough to know how to unmute themselves, but if not, you just click on your videos of the past trainings. Thanks, Brian. You just click on the microphone button in the bottom left. And I don't have links to these handouts ready yet. This is more just my thoughts. So, but I will post a link to one video I'm going to show. And if I have any additional resources, they'll be posted on the website. So, and there is captioning available if you need that. So go ahead and click on captioning and you will be able to see the captioning by our fabulous captioner, Connie, who we are grateful for helping us out each week. Okay, so my plan today is to talk about how we can promote independence in routines. And when I say this, I'm thinking about all types of routines and all types of learners and children and youth. And some of the examples I give you will be specific to different types of learners. So when I started thinking about routines, and last fall I did a session on routines and the importance of routines and ways that we could maybe incorporate more routine-based learning into home environments since we were all at home. When I started getting ready for today, I really started thinking about, routines really are a great way to teach skills, but also do so many other things. So I think we often think of routines as a way to teach a specific skill, but there's also opportunities to teach concepts. So teach why we're doing a particular routine, or where a routine occurs, or what time of the day we do it, or who we might do it with, whether we enjoy it or not. I mean, I personally love to fold laundry. So that's a routine that somebody else might not like, but I don't love having to clean my bathroom or wash dishes every night. So, but some people might love that. You have opportunities to build relationships with other people that are engaging in the routine with you or do a common routine. There's lots of opportunities to initiate communication, and we will talk about that specifically more in depth. And then for a lot of routines, there's actually many routines don't just happen in one place. You actually have to navigate somewhere in an environment or navigate somewhere in the community or the school. So there's a chance to actually learn a lot of travel skills and independence there. But also, if you really think about orientation and mobility, for those of you who know something about that, actually it's I feel like the whole instructional model of orientation and mobility is very based on routine. I mean, that's one of the biggest accommodations that they're teaching is thinking about building routine into things so things are predictable. Every routine offers opportunities to make choices and to solve problems, which I think is something we have to make sure we give our students and children opportunities to do, to solve problems. And lots of routines can help someone be able to contribute in some way to their family or school community, even if it's in a small way. And we'll talk about that. And then finally, just we all feel, today I'm focusing again on the idea of independence and being able to do something yourself. And that can really lead to like this great feeling of positive self identity and self worth and feeling like, a self image, people seeing you as someone who can do things and has learned this skill or learned this concept. So I also started thinking about how promoting independence and routines actually, what's pretty cool about it is it allows you to kind of combine a lot of deafblind practices that we talk a lot about when we do training or when we do TA. And some of the ones that I thought that stuck out to me in particular is this idea of do with, not for, um, is a great, that's obviously a good way to promote independence. Um, we talk so much about trying to help make the world seem more ordered and less chaotic by engaging in predictable routines for students so that they have um, some that they know what's coming up. They're able to anticipate things. They're able to kind of understand how the world works because things are happening in this predictable way, and routines are a good way to teach that. And then there's so much concept development involved in routines, and we'll talk more about that in a few slides. And then finally, self-determination, which I think is something that our field is giving a lot of attention to lately, which is really, really great. But so how can we be, by providing these opportunities for students to be more independent, how can we really help them develop those skills that will allow them to really to be more self-determined youth and adults? So this is my one and only graphic in the presentation, and it is it's I'm going to give illustration credit to Heather Winthrow from Texas. Um, and I found it on the Communication Matrix website. She wrote a great blog about swatting the good fairy. And so I'll describe what it is, and then I'll describe to you who the good fairy is. So it's a white. It looks like a white piece of paper with a black ink drawing, and it's looks like a woman with a pretty cool pantsuit outfit, and she has wings that look like a butterfly and curly hair, and she's holding her fairy wand with a star on the top, and then but there's a pink fly swatter that has swatted her down, and if you don't know about the good fairy, or sometimes it's referred to as the fairy godmother syndrome, this is something we talk about in our field. And I'll bet those of you that are vision teachers, this is something you're aware of too. But it's this idea of unintentionally or unknowingly or with the best intentions doing things for children or making things happen for children when they're not aware of it. So it could be the example of bringing a child to lunch and their food is all right there on their placemat, their glass of milk is full. Um, and so great, they're having lunch and maybe they know that routine, but they have no idea about the fact that somebody has to prepare lunch or that you have to pour milk into the glass or that, and that the milk is kept in the fridge. So there's all these things that they're missing. It's the same thing with a child who's maybe, doing an art project or working with some math manipulatives in class, and they're all there on the desk, and then you just magically pick them up and put them all away. And the child, so things just happen to the child, things get brought to the child, things get taken away, and they don't participate in that part of the routine or that part of the activity. So, and there could be a lot of reasons why this occurs. I'd be curious to see if you want to pop anything in the chat why you think that and I've certainly been at the good fairy. I certainly have done it with students I've taught in the past. I've done it with my own children. Um, so if anybody wants to pop any ideas in the chat why they think we sometimes act like the good fairy, um, I'm curious to think why you think it happens. Anybody? I know in, oh, somebody put something in. Oh, it's easier, sure. Easier. It's easier, faster. Yeah, time I think is often the case. Um, I think it has a lot to do too, especially with students with multiple disabilities or multiple sensory issues. I think we often, it has to do with our view of the student in terms of their capabilities, that we just assume that they can't do it. So, the student drops some of their crackers when they're eating and things like that. So we quickly go and pick them up, not assuming that they could, reach down and find where their crackers are. I'm going to check and see. I've succumbed to glares from other, yeah, that I'm not helping the child. Good. Yeah. Very good. So thank you. Midnight Summer Blue. We think, or Blue Summer, we think we're being helpful. And you see this a lot also, I think, sometimes in our paraeducators who really think that's what their job is. Like they're hired to like help these kids. So I think we have to really think about whether our efforts to make it easier, to make it go quicker, to make it less messy, are really helping in that regard. So, some tips that I learned from Heather's blog and that I thought of myself is, so the first thing is time. So whenever the child or youth could perform the routine or even parts of the routine. So even if your child can bring their plate to the sink and drop it in the sink, maybe they can't load it in the dishwasher or wash it themselves, but if they could do that part, give them the time that they need to complete it. Or if they could pack their own backpack at the end of the day, but it's going to take a lot of time, well, give them the cue, the transition to go pack their backpack a little bit earlier. You could break the routines down into parts and think about what parts could the child or youth do. So maybe they can't do the whole routine, but then we don't just say like, you know, no, I get them dressed in the morning. I do, or I put his coat on and zip up his coat. I've seen that in a ton of classrooms. Step back and think, what part could the child do? Could they maybe just zip up their coat, or would they be able to go and grab it off the hook and get it themselves? And at those times, okay, you've identified those are the parts they can do. Step back, encourage the child. So provide that environment where they're going to want to try, make the attempt, wait, give them that time, and then give them lots of praise. If they can't do it alone, then practice do with, not for. Engage together in the routine with the child. If the child can't wash their hands themselves, then you use hand under hand and you help the child wash their hands together. You reach up together to turn the water off. You reach together to get the paper towel or towel. You reach together to put it back. So they're participating, and there's, think about again that opportunity to build that relationship because you're doing this thing together. Heather pointed out and this was one of the examples she gave with her son Orion, that that she found herself often when he dropped things, she'd go and pick it up. Well, again, how does a child, and her son is completely blind, and profoundly deaf, how does that child then learn that when you drop something, it doesn't just go away, that there's a way to go down and feel around and retrieve it? So if there's a way to support them to actually go find the materials that they may have like pushed away or dropped or things like that, that would be a good opportunity. And then the other key thing is you have to model for other people, and you have to explain to other people, like someone mentioned, point out like, you're not really helping, or good fairies aren't helpful. Good fairies are certainly, we know the good fairy is trying to be nice, but the good fairy is not helping this child make progress. Okay, so principle of partial participation. This is actually something that's very well known in the field of extensive support needs or multiple disabilities, because for some children, just because of their limitations due to physical disabilities, motor skills, maybe speech and language barriers, things like that, they're not able to do to routine. So independence, when I'm talking about independence in a routine, that doesn't mean that it's someone that can like make their own lunch, pack their lunch, and then put it in their backpack, go to school and get it all out and do every step of that. It could be one piece of it. So, and the principle of partial participation is so important for the learners that I just described, because otherwise these learners really are very passive. They have everything done to them. They have everything done for them. They don't have that opportunity to engage together in a routine, or to learn one part of an activity or routine. So, and that can just, if you think back to the first slide I showed, we're thinking about trying to promote positive self-identity and build relationships and understand concepts better. So it's really important that you look for a way for the child to participate partially. So think about, as I mentioned earlier, within the routine, is there one step the child can do? So can the child zip their coat or get it off the hook? Can the child put a mark on the top of the page? They can't write their whole name, but they can put a mark on the page, or they can use a rubber stamp to stamp their name on the page. So think about what adaptations also could allow the child or the youth to perform it. So some kids might not be able to do it independently because they need they'll forget the steps. So for those kids, develop a visual checklist, or there's a lot of visual planners and like calendars and checklists on that kids can use on iPads and iPhones. So think about if there's a way to do that. I worked with a child. He wasn't deafblind, but he had visual impairments and physical disabilities and intellectual disabilities. And every day, and he had to eat blended food. So, and he ate it by mouth, but his food had to be blended. And every day he blended his food at school. So he brought his lunch, and it was always some kind of casserole or something easy. And we would put that in the blender with the liquid that he brought, and then he was in a general ed class included. So he and his peer buddy for the day would go to the cafeteria a little early for lunch, and he used to switch, and he turned the blender on. He could not scoop. He couldn't pour it into the blender. He couldn't scoop it out of the blender. He could not feed himself, but he made his lunch every day by hitting that switch and blending it up, and hearing feedback from when me or the other paraeducator and the peer about if he needed to push it again, if it was blended totally. So, and that, that he was proud of that. And that was a really important part of his day. And he was demonstrating to his peers a skill that he had. And then I've also had a lot of luck, and this is something that's taught again, with extensive support needs, is, you can use a reverse chain or a forward chain. Like you can break down the routine and think about just one step and start at the end or start at the beginning, and have the child just learn that and do that independently, and then you add the next step. So for some kids that works better. So it could be that a child could just be like taking their lunch stuff out of their lunchbox. That's all we're going to expect them to do. And then maybe next time they're going to zip it, then they're going to put it in the backpack. Setting the table at home could be an example. Walking with the family to the local park. So so maybe the child is just going to have to remember to get their white cane to get ready to go to the park, and that's all they're going to do at first. And then they're going to get guided and assisted. But then we'll add one piece after another. So skills and concepts. There's a great module in the Open Hands, Open Access modules that's on concept development actually, but it uses routines a lot to provide the example of how it's important to think about that. Oftentimes we teach skills and we teach a child how to do something, but we don't really tell them the why of it. So we might teach them how to load a washer, but they might not understand that we're loading the washer because the clothes are dirty if there's someone that can't see that well. Or if they're not picking up on the fact that every person in the household has a laundry basket in their room, and or you might teach them to sort clothes, but you're not explaining to them why it's important that we do lights and darks. And you could think of the same thing with different academic skills. So So the first thing is really realizing that within every routine, there are concepts to learn as well as skills. So within a routine, we identify what are the skills that have to be learned to do this routine. But then we also want to think about what's the purpose of the routine so that the child understands, like, this is why I'm learning how to sweep the floor, or this is why it's important that I check my daily schedule or calendar at school each period. This is the purpose of this, because this is going to tell me what's coming next and tell me where I need to go next. So we think about the purpose and the particular steps. And then the other concepts that are part of routines are the fact that, routines happen at different times of the day. So they're going to start to learn that, the dressing routine or the toothbrushing routine. Like toothbrushing happens maybe a few times a day. Dressing happens in the morning. Undressing happens at night. The concept that maybe you wear different clothes to school, and then when you come home, you can change into other clothes. That there's the order to routines, that you can't sometimes change the order of a routine or it won't work out. So that there's places and spaces for particular routines to happen. And then within the routine, that we use a lot of different tools or toys or materials, and that what is that used for. So if you're teaching a child, maybe say like a grooming routine of teeth brushing, but brushing your hair, and maybe also washing your face, kind of showing them, teaching them like what a hairbrush is, and like, or a comb, and how a hairbrush or comb are different. Um, and that it's different than a toothbrush, and different than a brush that you would use to scrub something in your house. And then finally, the concept of personal identity, that feeling of kind of satisfaction or pride or understanding, like, I can do this. This is something I've learned to do. I can do myself. Other people know that I know how to do this now, know that I'm independent. That's a really important concept that can be learned through just allowing students to be independent and to learn new routines or even steps of routines. So I'm going to check my time. Good. And then the other deafblind practice that I think is so nicely tied to independence and routines is just the opportunities that routines provide in terms of all of the things listed on this slide. And the first one is just kind of sharing preferences, like how, you have an opportunity within a routine to let people, there's, as I said earlier, there's some routines that you might love or might be a favorite routine you could do every day. But there also might be some that you don't like so much, or that you like sometimes, or that you like to do with somebody else. I worked with a student once who really kind of tried to avoid, we were teaching him a lot of kind of school jobs so he could be contributing to the school community in some ways. This was at a school where students were fully included. And he really did so much better if he was allowed to have a peer partner come with him to do these things versus an adult. So that could also be a preference that could be shared. And then within routines, lots of opportunities for multiple times within a routine to make a choice or to make a selection. So it could be what material you're going to use to complete that task or routine, or if you want to finish an hour later, or maybe you're gonna maybe the routine is ordering something at a restaurant or store, so there might be multiple choices you can make. And then an important one, the next two are very important, I think. And these are the ones that I think, again, where the good fairy really sometimes comes into play. And we decide that, you know what, this child has deafblindness, or this child has a disability, or this child, has special needs, something like that. And we think we're going to try to make the world so they don't have to face a problem or figure something out. But recognizing problems and solving problems is really important to self-determination, and a really important life skill, but also something that they should have the opportunity to to try and do. We shouldn't be this kind of protectionism that we sometimes have. And then also, learning from consequences. So if you don't do the routine right or you don't complete it, then you might not, get, if you don't wash the dishes after the meal, you're going to have a sink of dirty dishes in the morning, or you might not have a clean dish for your breakfast. If you decide to not do your math problems, then you're going to have a lot of homework tonight. If you if you are out on the playground and you're doing the routine of passing out materials to other peers or something like that, and 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 uh, and then you leave your post and you stop doing it, you know, uh, some of the kids might not get their materials. Kids might be mad at you. You might not get to do the job again. So I think it's important that students have the opportunity to kind of recognize problems, but also deal with natural consequences. There's also positive natural consequences, of course. Um, Washing all your dishes means you have dishes for breakfast. Doing your job right at school means that you get to keep it. And then routines can oftentimes, another reason to identify routines for students to engage in is because, again, for students who have multiple disabilities, very important, lots of times their interests are pretty limited, because they haven't had the experiences. So if we can start to identify as many routines as we see their same age, typically developing peers engaging in. And we try to think of a way that they can do that, whether it's partially with one part or with an adaptation, or if it's slowly learning all the steps. They might develop a new interest in this that could lead to a leisure or recreational interest in the future, or could be good vocational skills. So there's a lot of things it could lead to. And then finally, routines, if you're doing them together with others, or if you're talking to someone about it later, or someone sees you doing it, and there's this opportunity to share ideas and feelings with others, and also feeling this sense of accomplishment. So I think those are all terrific outcomes. And I was glad I thought to do this presentation because I wouldn't really have thought about how routines fit into that, but I like it. Um, Now, I do want to say, I've just got a few more slides here. I know I'm almost to 4, so we might go a little past 4. Um, Independence versus interdependence. So I think one thing to be aware of is, as a Western culture, Western cultures tend to really elevate independence and value it highly. Um, and also, even within Western culture, certain groups identify more with and value independence more than interdependence. Interdependence means that you're doing things, but you're doing it together with the group. Or what you're doing not for yourself, but you're doing it for the group. So I think really if you're working with families and you're trying to promote that the child be more independent, just be aware if they are if their culture is actually one that and Eastern cultures tend to, and then also cultures that really highly value family over individual, really value interdependence. So you might want to think about, instead of focusing on independence, what are ways that the person could contribute to the family? What are routines that the family does together that the child could have more of an active role in? So think about that. And then also, just interdependence is just something I think that more and more we're thinking about more and more, in society, and realizing that we're all kind of part of this big collective family, and we need to figure out ways that we're making it equitable for everyone. And one way to do that is thinking about interdependence. So look for ways that the child or the youth could be what their participation, how could it contribute to something? So could the child set the table for the family? That's something they're offering to the family, not just themselves. Could they bring in the mail? And maybe that would be a really fun activity for them during the day. Maybe they develop a relationship with the mail carrier. Um, you could expand that then to teaching the routine for actually going to the post office. So there's a lot of opportunities. Maybe a child who can only use a switch could use a switch to sharpen pencils for their class, or they could push their switch to call everybody's name out to see who needs to turn in lunch money for the day. So there's lots of ways that someone could have a chance to contribute if you think of interdependence. And then the final thing with that is when students need support and routines, and many of the kids we work with do, they can be as independent as possible, but they still may need some support. Think about who's the best person to give that support. And, I challenge you to not only always rely on paid adult support staff, really don't forget peers. And when you're in school settings and when you're in home settings, parents tend to kind of think they have to do everything sometimes, I think, for their child with complex needs. But, siblings might really also benefit and enjoy that opportunity. So, talking about interdependence, I want to show this video. It's I think in one of our other sessions we showed the hand under hand video, but we are doing these video fact sheets with the Idaho Children and Youth with Deaf Blindness Project and the Montana Deafblind Project, we're doing a few things together. So these have come out of the Idaho project, but they're sharing them with California Deafblind Services. They're publicly available on YouTube. I will put the link in the chat, but let's watch this video and so this also is going to show when Robin, and that's who's narrating it, Robin Greenfield from the Idaho project, you will hear her talking a lot about communication and the opportunity that the pause or this wait time provides. And you'll hear her talk a little bit about interdependence. You won't ever hear her say independence, but I think there's a lot of examples here in watching this interaction between this child and her mother. So it could be, so the partner that's involved with her. I think there's lots of opportunities where the mom is really promoting independence and thinking about partial participation, thinking about following her interests. So let's take a look. Oh, I'm going to make sure that I shared my sound. Hang on. I'm not positive I did that. No, I didn't. I'm going to do that. Okay. Now you should be able to hear it well.
The words "the pause" are written on the title screen. A mother and child are seated on the floor with several toys.
The pause is an instructional strategy inserted into an ongoing activity or interaction. It is designed to encourage a learner's response to continue an activity. Using a pause strategy is a way to build the skills of a learner to become a more intentional communicator, in that the learner begins to understand the need to direct their behavior towards another person in order to have the activity continue. The activity that is chosen should be something the learner likes. It should get their attention. At the same time, the activity should include moments for natural pauses and require the learner to initiate a response to indicate they would like the activity to continue.
The mother plays with a toy. When she pauses, the child reaches for the toy.
I'm going to do it for you. Should we do more?
As intentional communication is more likely to occur in the context of a highly preferred activity, a partner needs to be in close proximity to the learner and be responsive to their means of communication. Some learners may exhibit very subtle responses, so it is up to partners to be good observers and understand that their quick response will teach the learner that their reply has power.
The child pushes down parts of a toy. He signs "more" to play again.
Yay! More! Okay. Let's do it. Go ahead. Yeah. Get it. Push it down. Good job.
The length of a pause will depend on a learner's sensory, physical, and cognitive abilities, as well as their interest in the activity. A pause requires the learner's partner to be patient and understand the importance of the strategy. If a learner does not respond after a certain amount of time, then the activity should continue, inserting another pause into the routine.
The mother pushes down a spinning toy. The child does not respond.
Should we do it again? Should we do it again?
The pause is a component of developing interdependency and trust between two people, a learner and a partner, and a learner's understanding of their own ability to communicate.
Okay. So I am stopping that. And I will put the link in.
The
Oopsie,
words,
sorry.
the pause.
Hang on. All right, I'm trying to close this. There we go. Okay, and come back to Zoom so I can see everyone. So hello. Any questions or comments or examples?